Well, thank you for being with us today. Can you tell me a little bit about where you were born and where you grew up and how you ended up here in Richmond?
We both grew up in Minnesota, about 20 miles west of Minneapolis. My hometown of Loretto is 600 people, and St. Michael, where Pat grew up, is 10 miles away from Loretto, and that was what?
500, I think.
Yeah, 500 or 500 or 600 people. So very, very small Midwestern communities, but close to the Twin Cities. Both of them very, very Catholic. And understanding where we grew up in those small towns, there is only one church, and there is only the Catholic faith, and it's all that both of us knew growing up, and we just it's kind of one of those assumptions that's the way the rest of the world is. We've had our faith in the background actually in the foreground for a considerable period of time in terms of what our life experiences have been.
And what school did you teach at?
I taught at Marymount School here in Richmond from 1971 to 1975. Marymount, I think, closed in 1995. It's been one of the primary experiences in my life. I still stay in touch with my kids, although my last graduating class from 1975, they're all turning 60 this year. Even though I spent a long corporate career, that 4 years as a school teacher is probably what I identify more as than a corporate employee, and probably what led me to do what I do now.
And how was your faith nurtured as a young adult after you had been through the Catholic grade school and high school?
As a young adult, when you leave a strict school, a strict family environment, I'll admit it, I kind of went wild. I love nursing. I've always wanted to be a nurse, and I loved nursing. I just really loved my independence and stuff, so I will admit that there were a few years in there that I didn't go to church, but my faith never left me. It still was part of taking care of people and having compassion and love for others and stuff. So that part never left me.
And then did you meet? You knew each other as teenagers.
We did.
And then
in high school we dated exclusively our junior, senior year.
As much as
we could, as much as my dad would allow. Yeah. And then having to do with my getting out independence, away from a strict home, we broke up. I broke it up. And it was at our 15-year high school reunion that we re-met. And that was in April, and we were married by October. And it's been 37 years.
No, 35.
35, okay, excuse me, 35 years.
So how did you know he was the one, or how did you know she was the one?
Well, it was kind of interesting to reunite at a high school reunion, and I guess why the time span seems to be short from May until October. We skipped all the preliminary stuff because we'd known each other in a previous life, and our paths had not crossed for probably 10 or 12 years before that reunion. So it was, and I wasn't actually going to return. One of my friends called and said, whether you want to come back or not. His wife worked for Northwest Airlines at the time. He said, you're coming back whether you want to or not. The ticket's in the mail. I went back with no expectations, and lo and behold, Pat was there as well, and we talked at the reunion, and she took me to the airport the next day, and things kind of moved forward from there. I was a Philadelphia resident at the time that this all went on, so we didn't take a direct path back to Virginia again. We actually were married in Philadelphia from late 82 until I came back, or we both came back here in 1990. So I remain an Eagles fan yet because of my experience there. But that's how we got together and ended up getting married, and how we ended up back in Virginia again.
And then Pat, as a a nurse, how does your faith inform what you do, or did it help get you through some difficult days in nursing?
One thing I've always did with a lot of people have different reactions, for instance, to being in hospitals, to being sick. You know, they're out of their comfort zone, you know, and stuff. And I always ask God to guide me, you know, to help me know what to say to them. I talked a lot. Prayer to me is talking to God, and I did that a lot. The person didn't know that. As I was starting an IV, I'd say, God, please help this needle to go into the right place or something. You know, it was just something that was in my head all the time, you know, and stuff. So that's what I mean when I said that. What Mom and Dad taught us is will never leave me. It's just part of my life.
And then how did you pass that along to your children?
Leanne, example, everything that I've been involved with here at St. Mary's, Leanne came along to do a lot of it. You took her to a work camp when you went with her when she was a teenager. You took her, I took her along to Meals on Wheels with me when she could. So example was a huge thing for us. Plus, I helped teach religious education. That's what it was called back then as she was growing up. I did it from kindergarten and through 8th grade, and then I taught confirmation class here. You know, so that's how I tried to pass it on to her.
I taught Leanne to drive, so that probably helped us preserve our faith
sanity.
Through.
Was there a lot of prayer involved with
A lot
that?
of prayer involved in that process. Yeah. But yeah, I think Pat hit it right on the head. Our daughter is now in her early 30s, and our objective with her growing up was to set that example for her by how we lived, and to certainly get her introduced and embedded in our faith. She went to St. Gertrude High School. She did not attend a Catholic grade school, but she did go to a Catholic high school. And because we were believers, we seemed to have survived Catholic education reasonably well. And we were believers in Catholic education, so we sent her on from there. Just one additional comment about that situation is when your children reach a certain age, and Pat referenced it in her own life where you're away from home and you begin to make decisions on your own. When I got to college, nobody was forcing me to get up on Sunday mornings anymore. So you begin to experiment with other means of living your life. You know, our daughter makes decisions on her own now, and we just hope that the way we conducted ourselves as she was growing up is what ultimately will be a guide for her moving forward.
And why was the choice of a Catholic high school important for your family?
I think, obviously we both have been involved with Catholic education pretty substantially. I think I'm pretty close to being ordained after all the years I've been part of Catholic education, but just the values-oriented education you get in Catholic schools. Plus, St. Gertrude's was top-notch academically, and obviously the religious training that you get, or religious involvement as you get going to a Catholic school. And I think Leanne was probably involved in more activities
there.
As being part of St. Gertrude than she may have been at a public school. So as far as we're concerned, it was definitely a worthwhile experience. And she often said that getting out of St. Gertrude and graduating was probably harder than getting out of college. So obviously there was some academic rigor involved.
I have heard that, yeah. So you went to your share of song contests, I guess.
I had song contests when I was a school teacher.
Oh, okay.
Because Marymount did the same
okay.
thing on a little bit different format, but same situation. So even before, and I was a class moderator as well when I was a school teacher. And keeping in mind that Marymount was a couple hundred young ladies, I was pretty familiar with how this whole situation works. So yeah, I've had basically 8 years of song contests in my background.
what are some forms of prayer that have been most helpful to you over the years?
Okay, forms of
Prayer.
Well, like I mentioned before, I talk to God a lot, you know, and like I had a kind of chuckle when Brother McGrath, you know, that would just talked, when he's had Mother Teresa say, you know, how do you pray? And she says, I don't say anything, I just listen to God, vice versa. Well, I talk a lot. Most of it's in my head, but I do talk out loud sometimes because I just don't understand some things, why they're happening and stuff. And talking about so many things that are going on in the world today, or why some things were happening, you know, for us. For instance, we had went through a difficult period with trying to adopt a second child. And by then we were 41 years old, and it was just up and down and up and down. It was like a roller coaster, and I just didn't understand what he wanted us to do. You know, we wanted children so badly. Well, I would see advertisements on TV for foster children, and also had a neighbor who was taking care of a 5-year-old boy from Haiti here for open heart surgery, and she told me about the organization and stuff, and you know, I just said to Larry that we're being told something, you know, something keeps showing up, you know, here, it must mean something. And so we got started with Medical Care for Children, it was called back then, through Ann Smith, and we took care of children who came from other countries with no parents, you know, with them for surgeries. And we've had them, you know, from 6 weeks to 3 months with us, and they became our children. You know, so that talk did good, really. He answered that prayer. I mean, I used to tell people that, my daughter, she would just say, I do pray, but God doesn't answer me. And I said, maybe you're not listening right, you know, to him, or maybe he did answer you and you just don't like the answer, you know, and stuff. So you kind of go with what you think you're being told.
So can you tell me a bit more about that ministry where you take care of children who need medical help? Like how long would they stay with you, and what was it like when they were ready to go home? That must have been hard.
Well, the first one especially was hard because Jeremiah was only 9 months old, and he had club feet, both bilateral club feet. Very common thing that is easily taken care of here, but he couldn't get it in his country.
Pat, where were the kids from? They were from
most of them Central America.
One young lady from Cameroon.
Africa.
So we got some global experience with his kids too.
Yeah. But Jeremiah was the baby, you know, I wanted in my arms so badly, and he got through it all okay. He was with us for 3 months, I think. But the thing is when those kids are given to you, handed to you at the airport, they become yours, you know, and it's like you're taking care of your own child. Back when Jeremiah had to go back home, it was very hard for me to give him up. And back then, you were still allowed to walk to the gate, and they even let me walk onto the airplane and hand him to a flight attendant that was taking him back. It was very hard with Jeremiah, but the other kids were toddlers, except for Alamato from Africa. She was 12. But the rest of the kids were toddlers, and they came here with a lot of orthopedic problems, so they were wearing body casts and in wheelchairs and stuff. So it was heavy lifting work, you know, and they spoke Spanish when they came, but they learned English so quickly that we just never had a problem.
They became part of the neighborhood kids in a matter of no time, because Leanne was little then too. The next thing you know, and there were a whole lot of kids in our cul-de-sac at the time, so the kids who came and stayed with us would end up just being another one of the neighborhood kids. So it was pretty interesting dynamic sometimes with those little ones.
What a blessing.
Unfortunately, Anne had to stop doing it just because of her life. She had aged, and her life had just gotten really busy. So, but there still are programs out there like that. But we did that for 6 children. Leanne was between the ages of 5 and 13 for Leanne. We took care of those children. And I would work still in between that. But with my kind of job, I was able to take off part of the time. You know.
And your skill as a nurse, too, that had to be.
Oh, it was definitely helpful.
Yeah.
Definitely helpful.
Wow. How did Leanne like that?
Leanne went between jealousy and loving to have
Yeah.
another child in the house. Yeah, but
The jealousy kind of disappeared.
Yeah, as she got older,
Yeah.
you know, but at 5, 6 years old, we had our ups and downs, you know, and stuff, but she did good.
When in your life have you felt closest to God?
I mean, I have an answer.
Go ahead.
When Leanne was put in our arms at the airport, you know, it's just like, you know, at last, and you know, we have our child.
And just so you know, Leanne was born in Seoul,
Yeah.
South Korea. So we picked her up at JFK up in New York, and it's instant child or instant kid. I mean,
Yeah.
get off the plane and hand you a baby, and there were 6 that arrived with Leanne. We had expected a boy just because at that time there were the majority of kids being adopted out of Korea were male, and the availability of girls was less. And plus, in the first go around, you couldn't specify gender, so we expected to get a little boy. And they sent us a picture of this skinny little baby with a foot sticking out from underneath her.
She was a preemie.
blanket. Yeah. And
time,
so
yeah.
when she arrived, though, she was just this
Bowling ball.
little bowling ball by the time.
She was 3 months old when she came.
So
So,
yeah, that's how she arrived. We have it all on video, so every now and then we can watch when she arrived all those 31 years ago. So yeah, pretty unique experience. And the interesting thing about adoption is you don't need to know a lot to have kids by natural means, but the adoption process is pretty rigorous.
pretty rigorous. They put you through a lot.
Yeah. So we weren't successful in our efforts after that to add to the family, but not for a lack of trying. And we've been blessed with one daughter who's now married, living in Pittsburgh, Steelers fan, Penguins fan, and she and her husband are doing
well.
pretty well.
Have there been any times where life has been a struggle, and during that, was your faith helpful to you?
I lost a brother to a motorcycle accident in July of 1981, so it's been a long time. That day is as fresh in my memory as if it happened yesterday. And I had just transitioned to Philadelphia from DC, and keeping in mind that 81 was prior to cell phones. I didn't have an apartment. I was living out of a Stouffer's hotel. My father didn't know how to even reach me, and he ended up contacting somebody in the Minneapolis office who just happened to know me and tracked me down that way. But the trauma of, because there were, in my family, there were 3 boys and 3 girls, and the brothers were 3 of us were very close. And so the shock of that day, and the trauma of dealing with this, with the following days, being back with the between family and faith, it was definitely probably the hardest time to get through that I can recall. Memory remains strong. Every one of us in the family, my sisters and my brother, has a Lee in there somewhere. And our daughter's name is Leanne, so that memory remains strong. But things like that will put your faith really to the test, just because it's such a traumatic event to have to get through.
And how did your faith get you through that first day and the days that followed?
You know, on the first day, I don't think you're even thinking of faith. You're just thinking that I actually hear what I just heard, and you're focused on the details. Okay, how do I get back to Minnesota from Philadelphia? And then after that, and again, coming from the Catholic background we came from, and all manner of handling a Catholic funeral in a small town in Minnesota, it helps you to get refocused, and I think just belief in God, and that applies to the entire family as well. It's one of the things that helped us get through that, and especially observing my mother. No parent should ever lose a kid that way, and it was hard on her then. I think it still sticks in her memory at age 89. Yeah, so I think faith was definitely part of the healing process of getting through that whole situation.
Is there a moment in your involvement in the parish where you were really grateful for the support of your parishioners here at St. Mary's?
For me, it's been just the overall experience of being part of St. Mary's. The community that exists here is unbelievable community. The outreach programs that this parish offers, the generosity of the parish, the leadership of Father Mike and the staff here at St. Mary's. Very supportive as a community. Have I had to, or have we had to rely on the parish for any specific incidents of requiring support? I can't identify a specific incident.
I can't either, but I agree with what he said. I had someone say to me once that she didn't like coming here to St. Mary's. She was looking for a church. And she didn't just feel welcomed, and I just said, I was just shocked because I feel we're a very welcoming church and there's so much going on. And I said, did you talk to anybody? No. Did you check out the ministries there at church, what you might be interested in? No. And I said, well, it takes a little effort on your part too. To me, this church is so full of things that we can do to live our faith. And you just have to, check it out and see what is right for you. And I have just found everybody, very welcoming. But then I'm not somebody to stand against the wall either. I go out and meet people. I'm not a homebody. I'm out there.
You drink plenty of coffee after Mass.
Yeah. Yeah, we sometimes have to drive separate on Sundays because I like staying here and drinking coffee and talking to people, and he wants to get home.
Before you're out.
Well, he's got to play golf, right? So what are some of I know that you're involved in the Human Concerns Ministries. Can you talk a little bit about what you do there and what you get out of it?
Okay, I've been with Human Concerns 26 years, something like that. Yeah, just shortly after I started here. There, again, are just so many ministries under the umbrella of Human Concerns, and there's just so many different aspects of ways to get involved in it, so that, yes, I can be on the committee and help organize things and be a committee leader or whatever, but to me what's fun is getting down there and doing the work. I'm not a delegator, I'm a doer, but I can play both roles. Getting involved with Human Concerns helps you because when everybody tells about what their concerns are or what would be interesting to do, their involvement in each of the different ministries, they're teaching me, what that's all about too. And by getting involved, it's very fulfilling. I have always enjoyed, for the most part, I'm sure there have been times when I didn't feel like going to the meetings and stuff, but it's always been a very fulfilling group of people to be with.
Can you think of any specific examples where that really brought home to you, wow, just how fulfilling that ministry is? Working with a child or?
First thing that comes to mind is many years ago we used to do set up a little shopping bazaar thing, and we would have stores or people, either they were disabled or homebound, but would make crafts, and anyway we display them and people could come and buy them. I always took the opportunity to go visit them. Like I went to the Virginia home because the disabled there made a lot of pottery products or paints or whatever. And meeting them and talking to them, to me made just a world of difference in appreciating, what we were displaying and giving them the opportunity to show their things. One thing that I have enjoyed about every ministry I've been involved in is meeting the people. And it has happened sometimes that even after, we're done with, for instance, I took Christmas gifts to somebody's house. Well, I kept in contact with her, for several years afterwards until, she moved, So you have that opportunity. There's so many opportunities out there to meet people and see people in different lives that are, mine is so cushy, but you meet people who are going through some really tough times. So.
I'd like to make one observation about the parish nurses. If you've ever been in church when there's somebody who's fainted or had a medical issue and watch them go into action, that training is such a reflex,
it's automatic, yeah.
reflex action that I'll get climbed over the top of as Pat's heading out to help someone who may have just fainted somewhere, and it's just amazing to watch.
Yeah. It was hard for me to give up parish nursing a year ago. I did a little over a year ago. Kathleen Fogarty and I started the program many years ago. I think it was like 18 or 19 years ago, and but I knew it was time for me to stop because my hearing aids, and I was having some vision problems and stuff, and I just needed to back out. But I couldn't just back out and not do anything more, so I went and talked to Sister Pat, because I've always had a love for older people, too, with visiting and stuff, and so that's what I've opted to do now, is to take communion to them and visit with them.
Wonderful.
And stuff, so that's what I mean. I have to keep busy. I can't sit at home. Thanks to my parents, I have to keep involved.
And what do you like about taking the Eucharist to?
Well, it helps them stay connected, because there's so many Catholics, older Catholics, who think that if they miss church on Sunday that, something's wrong. And it just helps them feel like they are attending, somehow, and being part of it, and that they're not forgotten.
And then, Larry, tell us about some of the things that you do here at church.
My most important duty at St. Mary's is making sure the giving tree is put up at
Yes, he does.
Christmas time.
Okay.
I seem to have inherited that responsibility, so locating...
He retired, so I
Yes.
passed a few things on.
So, somewhere or other I got recruited and have been made a lifetime responsibility for the giving tree. But I've been engaged in the ESL program at St. Mary's for the last, I think we're in our 4th year. Also at Commonwealth Catholic Charities for a year before I came here. I also teach citizenship class for 6 weeks in the summertime. After a long corporate career, I was going to take a year just to decompress. Well, that kind of evolved into 3 years, and then it was time to find something to do. And getting back into a classroom was ideal. Teaching ESL is just a unique and just fun experience, and just for me as well, and hopefully my students benefit from it as well. But as an example, I have 9 students in my intermediate class this year at St. Mary's from 7 countries, and watching those people interact is just interesting and amazing, and you basically find out that people are just people regardless of where they come from. The citizenship class during the summertime it's a time commitment because it's a couple of nights a week for 6 weeks, but the reward of that class has been, I had a text message arrive a couple of weeks ago with a picture, and here was 2 of my citizenship students holding up their certificate of citizenship and an American flag, and they were 2 of my Iraqi students, and so I got to see firsthand the result of that class, and I'm back doing what I ought to be doing. I love being in the classroom. I seem to get a pretty positive response from those who are in my class, and it just allows me to be creative and to do what I really truly enjoy doing. So, I plan to continue to be involved in those things moving forward too.
And with the giving tree, do you also help with distributing the gifts?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, that must be fun. Do you like that?
It's the other responsibility I've been able to and get involved in has been the deliveries to Creighton Court. both at Thanksgiving and at Christmas time, and I've gotten to know a couple of the people over there, and we generally take a lot of turkeys there at Thanksgiving time and take a lot of presents over there at Christmas time as well. And I'm not a member of Human Concerns, but I've talked.
He's involved a lot.
I've told Rebecca, I'm your free agent if you need. I said I'm not here as often as Frank Lassiter is, because I think Frank has a cot somewhere that he sleeps on. But if there's something that's needed to be done or delivered somewhere or help with something, then I'll try to make myself available to help out with that. So stay engaged.
And do you help with the distribution of the gifts too?
I no longer distribute them, because I'm part of getting the, tree and stuff organized and sorting all the gifts.
That must be something.
Of course, I'm always available if they need the help, but we've got so many volunteers. People do call in and want to help. So that, there are some things I can back out of, and I have to learn to do that, because I can get too involved in some things, Larry loves that I'm on the Human Concerns, and like I say, he told me
I
the
get
first...
volunteered for things.
He gets volunteered for things. I do ask you,
After
but,
you've already volunteered.
His first year at retirement, I did not ask him, because he asked me not to ask him to do anything, and I didn't, and then it was just hints, here and there, and then it was, come and help me.
We need to do this. It's worked out well.
Yeah.
That's great that you can do it together too, right? Yeah. What would you want someone who maybe is new to the parish, what would you want them to know about how to get involved and just sort of the richness of the experience of really serving in any of these ministries?
Try something out, you have to come out of your comfort zone, because some people will say that they're too shy or something to speak out or anything. Just give it a try, and if it's not for you, then, that's okay, that's good. You've tried. And there, like I said, there's so many things that they could be doing here. There's so many different ministries to get involved with. If people aren't comfortable with meeting strangers or like taking gifts or whatever, there are things here at the church, that they can be involved in with Rebecca and community life and stuff too. There is something here for everybody, but they do have to make that step forward. St. Mary's is just the wealth of faith and ministries.
I think the first thing is to if you arrive here, make yourself aware of how many programs there are at St. Mary's that you can participate in. And there's bound, as Pat said, there's bound to be something that fits pretty much everyone.
Is there anything else you'd like to share about your faith journey?
We both have been RCIA sponsors, and that's been Pat did it before me. A couple of years ago, 3 years ago.
Oh my gosh, it's been like 10 years ago now that I did faith. Right. Yeah.
And I did it in 2016. Sister Pat thought, because of my quote-unquote international experience in teaching ESL and citizenship, there was a young man from Togo who wanted to become a Catholic. I didn't even know what Togo was or where it was located. Yeah. So I ended up sponsoring David Gabiam through the RCIA process in 16. He's now our godson. So we've been fairly involved in his life. He's pretty self-sufficient, but he's still learning the ways of America yet. He's actually returned yesterday from 30 plus days back in Togo visiting his family. So we both have had the experience of the journey through faith that RCIA brings, which is, being honest, for me, was considerably more involved than I've been in the past in terms of where that takes you and the involvement that you have. So worthwhile experience from a bunch of different standpoints, from involvement with a sponsoree who's now a godson and probably a lifetime contact as we go through that, and just I'm waiting for the next international student who wants to become.
Person to come in.
Wants
Yeah.
to come through and see if I get asked again.
So how did you work around what I assume was a language barrier as you went through this journey of the rite of Christian initiation for
He
adults?
speaks English very fluently.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they speak French as the native language in Togo, and I tested off a little bit of college French every now and then, just so I could, between his father's broken English and my broken French, we could at least say hello over the phone a couple of times. But it's a bigger question when it comes to ESL. And I've taught beginning ESL where you have folks who may not be literate in their own language, much less in English. And 2 hours of doing that would leave you physically exhausted, just trying to make it was almost like if you've seen The Miracle Worker, watching how what finally catches on, and once you find something that catches on, you just kind of run with it. So.
And when you're teaching English as a second language, it's not just English and another language, it's English in up to 9 different languages, or how many different languages?
Keeping in mind, I have an intermediate class, but even an intermediate class, the range of fluency is fairly wide. It's kind of a matter of how they test and where the coordinator, SWAT, and a SUG elects to put them in a class. So, yeah, I still have some language barriers that exist. The people who teach beginning ESL, and those are the folks who may have just arrived here. That's the real challenge. Just because English is not an easy language to learn. There are rules, but there are more exceptions to the rules than there are rules themselves.
Well, was there anything else that you wanted to share today?
I think we've pretty much covered
You've
Well,
heard
maybe
our
even a
life
little more
story.
ground.
Well, it's a very inspiring one, so thank you. Thank you both very much.
Thank you.